Amnesty International accuses the Tanzanian President John Magufuli's government of building up a formidable arsenal of laws to stifle all forms of dissent ahead of this month's election. Authorities have effectively clamped down on the rights to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly, according to the report. Amnesty claims security forces have arrested opposition candidates on bogus charges, stripping them of their right to freedom of assembly, association and movement in recent months. Well, joining us to talk more about that report is Roland Ebole, the Tanzania researcher for Amnesty International. Roland, many thanks for your time here on Bottom Line Africa. Let me begin with this report from Amnesty, touching on the media being the hardest hit, to the government banning several media outlets, newspapers and TV stations as well. Speak to us more about the situation in Tanzania.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and I'm happy to be here. Since President Magufuli took office in November 2015, the Tanzanian authorities have systematically clamped down on human rights and ramped up repression in the lead-up to elections, and they have used very broad and vague laws that either have been enacted, new laws, or have been amended in recent years. This has actually sent a chilling effect on debate and civic engagement. As we speak, currently there are a youth belonging to Chadema, that is the Chama cha Demokrasia Tanzania, which is the main opposition party. They were arrested on 6 July simply for singing the national anthem while hoisting the party flag. While the court released them on bail a few weeks ago, the government has not, authorities have not released them. You've mentioned freedom of the press, freedom of the media. The right to freedom of expression, peaceful assembly and association, and this is with regards to online and offline, expression, have been particularly curtailed, with real and supposed government critics and civil society groups most affected. You may know that the Mwananchi newspaper online, which is affiliated to as in a Kenyan media outlet, was suspended on April 17, 2020 for 6 months and fined about $2,150. And the reason that this happened was because they reported on, President Magufuli buying fish in a fish market in Chato with complete disregard to COVID-19 rules. So we also see that between the period where the corona pandemic was announced, the government has also used excuse of misinformation, fake news, and just COVID-19 as a pretext to ban media houses. And when you ban media houses, sometimes in April, May for 6 months, you realize that you're actually barring them from reporting on the elections. So this has gone on, and there are so many other examples to give. There are so many examples of laws that have been enacted, including August 2020, where there have been new regulations to media, to electronics and online content. There have been regulations whereby media outlets or journalists from foreign countries coming into Tanzania, for instance, have to have a government minder with them whenever they do their work. So the situation is dire. The situation is dire at this time, whereby politicians, media houses, NGOs, and any critic to government actually face reprisal.
Right, and part of this report by Amnesty International here says, the president and his administration seem to have weaponized the law in a way that he used his parliamentary majority to pass several pieces of repressive legislation that extends the government control over the country's politics and society as well. Things touching on, social media and cybersecurity. And let's focus on the fact that this is a man who says COVID-19 in Tanzania has been defeated by prayer, has refused to ban any sort of public gatherings except opposition political rallies. Let's talk about these laws that Magufuli seems to be using to repress the opposition.
Yes, I have mentioned the Electronics and Postal Online Content Regulation of 2018 that has had, many, as an amendments to it, including, forcing media houses to also let go some of their journalists. But mostly, you would realize that the ban on political gathering was not even, prescribed in a law. In 2016, around June 2016, President Magufuli issued a blanket ban on political gathering. But you, as you have listened to, as another politician speak, is that this law or this blanket ban, which is mostly a presidential order, was biasly used to prevent opposition politicians from gathering. Meanwhile, when you talk about Chama cha Mapinduzi, which is the ruling party in Tanzania, politicians allied to that party or members of that party and government officials continued gathering and using, promotional messages for the party as part of, the campaigns for the party. Earlier this year in June, another, head of political opposition, Zito Kabwe, was arrested with 6 of his party members simply for holding an indoor party meeting. And so you realize that it is just not laws as such. There are also blanket orders that are not pegged on any particular regulations, any particular law, and mostly, blanket orders that are as in really implemented without, as in regard to constitutional provision. We also have documented, new laws such as the Political Parties Act. It's a 2019 law that authorities came up with to really restrain political activities of politicians and giving the registrar of political parties a lot of power to really sanction or go after political parties. Earlier again, an opposition politician went to meet a foreign mission, and the registrar of political party actually wrote to this politician a letter saying that such kind of meetings are not allowed in Tanzania because then it is tantamount to involving a foreigner in the affairs or in the campaigns of a political party in Tanzania. So you realize that there are laws, yes, but it's how they actually used. In some cases, is the vague applications of these laws.
Let's talk about the judiciary, though, because, when it comes to legislation, we've seen quite a lot of skewed processes. Where has the judiciary been left in Magufuli's administration?
We have not documented much about the judiciary, so I will really hold back on commenting much on the judiciary. But one thing that I would say is that in a situation like we are seeing in Tanzania, people have actually looked up to the judiciary for some form of directions. But again, just last year you saw a top human rights lawyer, Fatma Karume, who was suspended from practicing law simply because she called into question the appointment or the processes of the appointment of the Attorney General of Tanzania, saying that he was not qualified to hold the Attorney General office. And because of that, the court found him in contempt of the court. And so the judiciary at this point should really be providing a direction. And one of the things that we are looking at as we head to the election is that we are seeing a situation in which President Magufuli has simply co-opted all state authorities. And so our worry is that this repression before this election, during the elections and after the election is bound to continue unless, of course, that there is pressure from groups outside Tanzania, groups in Tanzania to call on the president to actually end this form of repression and repressive use of laws.
All right, and Roland, finally, I mean, with the media being gagged, social media rules dictating what Tanzanians can and cannot post, let's talk about the role of NGOs like Amnesty International. Several laws, again, have been passed to sort of repress what NGOs can reveal or information they can reveal in Tanzania, Amnesty International being one of them. How then can we liaise and leverage on these reports, such as this one by Amnesty International, to champion for international support for what is happening in Tanzania?
As I've mentioned, laws are being introduced left, right, center every other day. In April this year, the government introduced some form of regulation to the NGO Act, the law that governs or the coordination of NGOs. And one of the aspects of it is placing some aspect of reporting of NGOs to be under the president's office. What here we would call regional administration. And this basically puts NGO operations under, say, a security docket. There are elements of reporting, various elements of reporting that have really put NGOs, in conflict with the law and in conflict with authorities. For instance, there are, requirements whereby NGOs have to report their sources, their proposals to, donors, and the use of funding 14 days before they really get, funding from donors. And we've seen organizations such as the Tanzania Human Rights Defenders Coalition, one of the largest human rights organization in Tanzania, having suspended its own activities because of failure to meet some of these many requirements that the government has put in terms of coordinating NGOs in Tanzania. Just June this year, we saw the National Electoral Commission banning several NGOs that have in the past done election observation mission throughout Tanzania. And with this kind of, clampdown on NGOs, including many others that I've not mentioned, we find that the only hope that we have, of course, is people outside Tanzania speaking out, because the voices in Tanzania right now are so muzzled. People are not free to really speak, especially if they are raising concerns that, go against what the government would like them to say. And so for organizations such as Amnesty International, we really rely on others, outside Tanzania mostly, to give voice to the already shrinking voice that exists in Tanzania. And lastly, with regards to the NGO space again, we find that whatever is happening right now is that the government is basically using, NGOs that are affiliated to it to actually, speak and say that, we have allowed freedom of non-governmental organizations to operate in Tanzania, yet that is not the case. If you look, the organizations that have been known to be critical, those that have been reporting on human rights violations, those that have been speaking out, against various violations, not just with regards to civil and political rights, even those that have been speaking on, economic, social, and cultural rights, like the issue of pregnant schoolgirls not being allowed to go back to school, are actually now being deregistered or being penalized for reasons that are not really properly founded in the law, or when they are founded in the laws are actually very vague, that it is impossible to actually meet all the requirements that these laws for NGOs provide.
All right. Many thanks for speaking to us. That is Roland Ebole, the Tanzania researcher for Amnesty International, an organization sounding the alarm over a decline in political and civil freedoms in Tanzania.